Well, hello again. You are watching another edition of the Scooting Scholar Report. I am your humble host, Richard Lawrence. Well, it has been crazy hot here in Southern California this week, and there have been some crazy happenings around the country. First off, Kim Davis. I'm sure you know who Kim Davis is. Well, if you don't, let me give you a little reminder. She is the county clerk of Rowan County, Kentucky, who was jailed on a contempt of court charge for refusing to issue marriage licenses to same-sex couples. Davis cited religious liberty, religious beliefs as her reasoning that it was against God for her to issue these licenses, and therefore she shouldn't be required to. A judge found her, like I said, a judge found her in contempt and ordered her to jail, where she spent 5 nights. But the other day, Davis was released on the contingency that she began issuing marriage licenses. We will see if that actually happens. But there was a huge, in the ensuing time, there was a huge rally for her after she came out from jail, and it was organized by Mike Huckabee. Mike Huckabee is the former governor of Arkansas and one of the many current Republican presidential candidates. So he organized this rally, again, talking about her faith, her religious liberty, and why it was wrong for her to be jailed. And apparently there are quite a few people who do agree with this stance, at least based on the number of people who came out to join her. One of those people who came out to join her was none other than another one of the many Republican presidential candidates, that being Ted Cruz, the senator from Texas. Unfortunately, Cruz was not able to participate as much as he had hoped, since, ironically enough, it was some of Mike Huckabee's staffers who blocked him from coming up on stage and joining with Huckabee and Davis. According to reports, Huckabee felt that it was his team that put together the event and got the permits and did all of the organizing, and felt that Ted Cruz was being sort of an interloper. As he said, Cruz was not, this is what Huckabee told Newsmax TV, that Cruz was not free to just invite himself up on stage and expect to be a speaker at this rally. But more importantly, though, I just thought I would throw that in, but more importantly, while Huckabee and others try to frame this as a religious liberty issue, it's painfully obvious, to me at least, that they're using this as kind of a cover to hide their just plain outright disdain for same-sex marriage. Of course, they know that it's probably not in their political best interest to simply say they don't want to see same-sex couples getting married. So by using the religious liberty frame, it at least puts it in a different light. But like I said, I'm not fooled. Now we'll see what happens, because as I said, Davis returns to work on Monday. Will she comply with the judge's orders, or will she continue to act as she behaved before she was jailed? I guess we'll just have to wait and find out to see how this drama unfolds. Now, the other crazy story just happened the other day as well, and that is the incident between New York City police and former U.S. tennis star James Blake. You see, Mr. Blake, who's a man of color, was standing outside of well, I don't know if it was his, but outside of a hotel in Midtown Manhattan, and he was waiting to attend that day's tennis at the U.S. Open in Flushing Meadow at the National Tennis Center. However, before he could ever leave his hotel, he was slammed to the ground, tackled, cuffed, and detained by a New York City police officer. Well, after the dust cleared and Mr. Blake was eventually released, well, we come to find out that it was actually a case of mistaken identity. Apparently, there was someone who had identified Blake as being part of a stolen credit card or credit card fraud ring. Now, it's very possible that Blake did or does look a lot like the person who they were looking for. I'm sure that is very possible. In fact, in his initial apology, well, it wasn't really much of an apology, Bill Bratton, the police commissioner for the city of New York, tried to say that, well, that Blake and the suspect they were looking for looked like twins. Now, maybe it's true. Maybe the person really does look a lot like Blake. But that's no excuse for how Blake was treated. As Blake said, he said that, quote, "I have resources to get to the bottom of this. But what about someone who doesn't have the resources and who doesn't have a voice?" Now, Blake was, pretty good about not really bringing race into make it race a part of the issue, at least not in an obvious way. However, if you read in the context and read between the lines when he says someone who doesn't have a voice, I don't necessarily think he's talking about a white guy standing in front of a nice hotel in Midtown Manhattan. If he would have, because really, would he have been treated the same way? Maybe, but I have a feeling he probably wouldn't have been. At least in Blake's case, Blake did have resources. For one thing, he had the United States Tennis Association on his side, who issued a press release expressing their disappointment with the New York City Police Department. Again, yes, the department has apologized for their behavior, but that doesn't excuse it. I just am, in a way, I guess I'm glad that it did happen to someone of James Blake's stature, because at least it did, once again, show how all too often police officers rush to judgment, especially when people of color are involved. Let's hope that somehow, some way, we can curtail this behavior before it continues to get worse. Well, that's about it. I wish I could have something a little bit lighter to talk about, but there's been so much going on that I just can't keep myself away from it. Anyway, I thank you so much for joining me, and I really would love to continue this conversation online, either at thescootingscholar.net or over at facebook.com/thescootingscholar or on Twitter at RJ Lawrence Jr. Anyway, I got to scoot. But like I said, I am so glad that you joined me, and I look forward to seeing you again next week.